Welcome to Pearls on a Pig podcast with Charlotte and Dolly, where we uncover everything you should know about Vegas philanthropy. Let's head to the studio now and see what we've unpacked in this episode. Hello, Charlotte. We're back again.
Dolly, I've just been melting here in this Las Vegas heat.
It's definitely a scorcher out there this week.
Nothing scorches me worse than these non-profits that we're looking into and how they say they're doing one thing out in the public, but on paper, something totally different. What's your take on that?
So I think this is where we talked about a little bit last week, the 990 and what that looks like for people that don't know. You know, it's in essence the transparency of an organization. So you can look them up for free on sites like Candid. But I think that it's especially important when I see a nonprofit that automatically posts theirs as opposed to, having people go look at it. But you mentioned something just now, and there's a lot to find out about an organization literally by looking at a 990 or an overview of the organization, right?
Yeah, so I feel like I can read a 990, but I feel like you've been doing this a lot longer in studying how the 990 works and how important it is. So why don't you walk me and our audience through that process of what to look for as possible red flags, or to even identify if their 990 is truly in alignment with what they're portraying out to the public, and also their overall health as an organization?
Yeah, I think it's really actually very easy to dissect a 990, even for a large organization, because you're really looking for four key pieces. You can do a deeper dive if you want to, but there's four things that are important to always look at. And the first one's the part one of the 990. It's just a summary. It's literally the mission statement. It's their year over year revenue, their expenses, and their total assets. So a quick scan of that should let you know whether or not they're operating, to the good or to the bad, right? At a deficit. So then there's the part, yeah.
So quick question before you go on. When you talk about the summary and the first thing you mention is the mission statement, and I know we touched on this a few episodes ago about mission shifting, right? So is it important that the mission statement stays the same as what you have listed on a website of your nonprofit organization?
Mm-hmm. Well, the obvious answer is yes. I mean, if that's your 990 follows you from the time you file either your 501c3 status, or if you're, a nonprofit or any type of organization, that mission statement is what you are saying you are doing and what your goal is. So it should be reflective of everything across the board, whether that's your website, your collateral material, your social media posts, your 990, your impact report. It should be consistent across the board. Your mission is your mission. Unless you're changing your mission halfway through, then you should document that too on your 990, because they are filed every year. It's in essence a tax return for a nonprofit. So yeah, I think another part to look at is the part 3 section, which is really easy to look at and dissect too. It's basically an overview of what the organization did that year, like the number of people served, their budget, their programmatic budget, their primary initiatives. What were they setting out to do that year, and did they accomplish that? Part 7 is easy too. It's just an important piece because it's the list of salaries, right? So you're looking at key staff, executive staff, board members. Usually the only staff that are reported on there would be your higher salaried staff. So usually somebody over a 6-figure would be on there. So your staff and your day-to-day help would not be listed on there, but you would be able to tell how much a CEO, executive director, their key staff, and even their board members, if they're being paid, are making. So that's always one that I like to look at, because it's like, that's where you can tell where the majority of the company's revenue is going, if there's a large chunk of pay going to the CEO.
Interesting.
And then the last part is just their balance sheet, which just kind of shows the health of the organization overall. So it'll show the assets, the liabilities for, again, this is over just the year. So that can fluctuate year over year, but it's important to look at. You can always go back and look at a prior year's 990 to do a comparison if you wanted to. But for the most part, nonprofits would be showing some sort of growth, you would hope. And so that's the basics of just being able to read those. I also find it fascinating at a 990, and maybe this is just me, but I would hope donors would look at it too, is the expense part where you might see a special event or a gala being hosted, and there's a very large line item for the expense of that gala. The second part to that is always go look at the revenue that that gala generated to see if there's a balance there or did they end up in the negative. So I think that's something that someone should definitely dive into and look at because it definitely gives you a good idea and a snapshot of how the organization is spending their money.
Well, I know I've seen around town where some of these galas are full-on productions, right? I know there's a non-profit in town that puts on a beautiful production at one of the most expensive hotels, right? There's all these high-level donors and prospects in the room, and I understand that. But like you said, that has got to cost the organization well over six figures. And then, so let's just say, for a sake of a number, it cost the organization $250,000 to put on that event. But then they're proudly saying, we raised $300,000. So technically, without even calculating your staff time, you've only netted $50,000.
Right.
And so then the question comes to, are these big galas really that necessary if it's going to cost a nonprofit money that takes away from either expanding substantially or providing services to more people and things like that? So what would your suggestion be for nonprofits to maybe look at changing the trend, I guess is what I'm trying to say? Because I do feel like there's a new generation of donors that are coming about. We're talking about our millennials, Gen Zs. They want to be involved. They don't have that kind of money, but they like to also be in a space where there's an experience that they can feel, right? And so I feel like there's a lot of mishap where that's not being taken accounted for. Now, don't get me wrong, there are nonprofits that do host events just as an appreciation, right, for their current donors, for their volunteers, for their staff, bring everybody in the room, but they're not spending $100,000, $200,000, right? Maybe $50,000, but then out of a whim, they end up raising $150,000. So that works. But what would be some ideas to have some of these nonprofits really take a step back? Because now I feel like they're probably trying to get into this competition of who can throw the best party.
And that's just it. We're talking about why do people throw the galas, right? Or these big black tie events and stuff. It mainly is because it's the opportunity for an organization to raise unrestricted revenue, which you know is scarce. A lot of donors don't like to give money for unrestricted revenue, which is basically paying programmatic staff salaries and things like that or overhead. They prefer their money to be used in a programmatic way, which is understandable. But at the end of the day, unrestricted revenue is so desired by most organizations to use it where it's needed most at that given time. So, enter gala, right? This was a way of everyone saying, hey, let's throw this party. We can raise unrestricted revenue. But I don't think anybody ever really thought the cost of hosting a gala was going to be the way it is today. It may have started off as a small party with that intention. And then as time went on and it grew and grew and word got out, now it is just like you said. Who can put on the biggest, the best, the most unique gala? But there's a price tag to all of that. And what's interesting is, while donors don't want to give unrestricted revenue, it shocks me that they would give a sponsorship to a gala. Where do you think that's going? So you want to sponsor food and beverage for the evening as opposed to giving unrestricted revenue that pays a human to do the programmatic piece of the job?
That's because I believe it goes into, that's their more or less expensive way of their marketing, because they want their names splattered all over the step and repeat, on the napkins. They want their lights and name everywhere. So I get it, but that could still happen if you just give directly to the organisation, because like you said, it's still unrestricted money going to where the initial intention was, to pay the staff to run the programmes. But now we got to do this dog and pony show just to get the sponsorship.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's crazy to me that somebody would choose a sponsorship, a one-night event, to have your name in lights for that particular audience, because this isn't being broadcast globally. This is just for that unique population in the room. There's no other way anybody else is going to see it unless they're there. So when you look at the galas, it's interesting because today they are so over the top and they take so much time and energy from the staff to pull this together. There's still staff time and there's still travel and there's all these other backside expenses that go along with hosting this gala, that at the end of the day, I don't truly believe that an organization could be anywhere but in the red after an event. If you take into account salaries and time and all of that, I just don't see that it's a positive thing for anyone.
I would agree. The time for me is the one that's really daunting, where once a gala ends, they're already in mode to prepare for next year. So again, your time just keeps getting sucked away to prepare for this gala. And nowhere in the form of this gala are we talking about what programs is this going to provide funding for. It's strictly just for unrestricted funds. And let's talk about...
I think it's just the galas too. I was just going to say, I think it's everything. Like, look at a golf tournament.
Yeah, if I see another golf tournament, that's the other part. These golf tournaments are getting out of hand. You have some organisations that have been strategically embedded in these golf tournaments for years before it became a popular thing with non-profits. But now there's a struggle because you have one board member on one organisation, but then they're a part of 5 different other organisations. How many times do they need to golf? Or how many times do they need to sponsor a golf tournament? Right. So where's the pivot from that? To see, okay, let's step back. Let's be a little bit more innovative. Think outside the box to still make an event an experiential event, a memorable event, but not just the same event that happened the same day. Some of these golf tournaments are happening the same day as another organisation's golf tournament. So now you're fighting for golfers. And at the end of the day, the golf course will charge you full tilt for the entire day, whether you have 100 or 44 golfers or not. And so where's the money being made in that as well?
I don't think there is either. I mean, between galas and parties and golf tournaments, I really don't think that's a revenue stream that a nonprofit can count on. I really would like to see it go away just because it truly has gotten way out of hand. And if every one of the organizations here in Las Vegas decide to host this, now you're competing with each other as an organization. Are you hosting yours that day? Is this one hosting theirs that day? There's no more dates left on the calendar.
Not to mention that the golf courses will only host a golf tournament for the non-profits on certain days. So now that's where the competition comes in. Are you hosting? Are you hosting? And so my thing is, who's doing the services? Where are the people getting served? What's happening in the community? Everybody's worried about who's going to golf.
Yeah. And then if you think about the golfing, right? So that's an active day. They're golfing, they're having beverages and some lunch. How are they interacting with the nonprofit? I mean, golf is a serious game that people are playing. So where's the interaction with the nonprofit, where you're actually having an opportunity to talk about your mission, raise awareness, seek donations? It's really a challenge because the golfers are there to golf and they might throw you some bucks, but they're not there to do a big check presentation for you. So again, now that golf tournament, you're depending on sponsorships from outside companies that want to have their name at this event. And that's not a bad thing, but I'm just saying there's a cap on how much money you're actually going to make when it comes to a golf tournament, because you're not going to get a ton of cash.
Well, absolutely. And the fact that you look at some organizations that are constantly having events, how many times are you going to dip into your well before it runs dry to sponsor these events? I remember way back when an organization had one main event, and that was what to look forward to. Now organizations are having speaker events. They're having little meetups here. They've got a women's group there, a man's group there, a food group here, and all of these things that you got to pay for. And I feel like the mission of the organization gets lost in translation.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think that's where we are today. And, originally before we started this dialogue, you had asked me, what do I think needs to change? I don't know that I have the answer to that. I just know as an observer, a donor myself, and years of being in the business, you really have to know your audience today. The audience has changed. And there's always an opportunity for the organization to change too. And the answer just might be no more galas. I mean, Do you really want to knock on the door of a large resort property and ask for a sponsorship to pay for your bar for the evening? I mean, how do you sleep at night? That's not a good feeling when you're asking for a sponsorship to pay for your event that you want to host, to tell that person thank you for being a partner. Like, it just doesn't make much sense to me. But I don't have the answer. I don't know what it is. I just know that I'm tired of getting invited to them. I have to make a choice on which ones I go to, because like you said, they're on the same days.
I see there's a lot of stress imposed by the board to the CEO or executive director to have these events. But then the board's not the one putting the events on. They're also not the ones putting up all the money. Maybe a couple of board members have their company sponsor here and there, but the level of stress that's happening on the leadership team of an organization really starts to weigh down, because they're chasing the same money as the other 600 non-profits, right? And the giving pool, as far as corporate sponsorships, is very small, especially here in Las Vegas. There are some key players and everybody claws at them. So I feel like there has to be a way to change the strategy, still be able to fundraise for unrestricted funds, but do it in a way that is experiential. They want to have an experience, they want to be excited, but it also talks about the mission and what you're doing in the community. You hear probably a snippet at these galas. We get put on with this auctioneer, live auction things, silent auction things. If I see another face mask silent auction, or I love our sports teams, but for everything that's in me, if I see another Raiders VGK, now the A's are coming into play, that gets played out. They want to see something different. They want to be part of something different. So I don't know what the answer is, but I do wish there was some kind of pivot in the strategy in how these events are being put on. Or again, why even put on events? There are non-profits that put on events strategically and purposely for their current donors, their current staff, their current volunteers, and it's all in one event. Not 5 events to appreciate 5 different people. One event, everybody's in the room, you're spending maybe 40, 50, 60,000 tops, and call it a day and have fun, right? And the other piece is, these events where one year it's at the Bellagio, one year it's at the Aria, one year it's at the Palms. I need you to pick one. Create a partnership. Get multiple discounts if you sign a multi-year, because with the constant jumping around, the constant date changing, if you had it for 5 years in the month of October and now we're changing it to April, well, that screws everything up. The consistency is a big part in the event arena of these non-profits. They're really trying to find a way to fit in, but you're fighting with 600 other non-profits. And it's not just organizations, it's fraternities, sororities, women's groups. Every time I turn around, there's a new non-profit doing something. Everybody's a non-profit now.
Yeah, and they're not going away. I mean, the reality is they're just going to keep growing and getting bigger, and someone's going to start a new one tomorrow. But at the same time, I think we're starting to see some sort of a shift. Now it's just the big heavy hitters. There's a couple here in town. There's one that works for Alzheimer's research and has a big Power of Love gala, where they enlist A-list celebrities and take over the MGM Grand Garden Arena. Yes, they raise millions, but it also costs millions too. But I think just alone for the awareness that they're able to tie A-list celebrities with the cause is enough for them. And that might be all that they needed. So if that was their purpose, then they definitely succeeded in that. Is it a fit for everyone? By no means. None of us in this arena in town have budgets like that. But again, you're looking at these golf tournaments where we also live in Las Vegas. It's hot here. And the golf tournaments, they're always offered during the summer months because that's when the golf club doesn't want to lose their regular revenue. So that's when they offer it to a nonprofit. So again, if you're an organization and if you're a donor, I would reconsider how you give your money. Because if you're not okay with giving it to unrestricted revenue to pay a human salary, why are you okay to pay a food and beverage bill for one evening? I mean, that would be a question I would want to be asked.
And I think that's also an educational, informational piece when talking with these donors, right? Listen, if they're willing to sponsor an event, I would even ask, can we do a split? Can we do half a sponsorship for this event and the other half for unrestricted funds? because paying someone's salary means they are able to continue to provide the services needed that we're doing in the community, right? So tying that, but I don't believe those conversations are even happening at all.
Probably not. No, you're right. They're probably not. Well, I think we covered a lot today in this episode. It's been a good one. So, again, just to kind of recap, we can definitely link where people can find a free 990. And you just can do a simple search on Candid site for an organization if it's piqued your curiosity. And any local ones if you want to see how they spend their revenue and what the percentage is for programs and events and staff salaries.
It's just simple math. All right, Dolly. Well, it's been a great day talking with you today.
You too, Charlotte. See you soon. Thank you for listening to Pearls on a Pig podcast with Charlotte and Dolly. If you want to reach out to us with suggestions for a topic on a future episode, drop us an email at pearlsonapigpodcast@gmail.com.